Ladies and gentlemen, the Alabama Senate will now come to order. Our prayer today will be delivered by Senator Andrew Jones. Senator Jones.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that we have today to come together and work on behalf of the people of the state of Alabama. Lord, we thank you for all the members here and their families. We pray a special blessing on each of them. We thank you, Lord, for this special session that we've had, Lord, over these past 5 legislative days working to give some of these resources back to the people of this state. Pray that you'll bless our deliberations today. Lord, we thank you for all the members of the public that are gathered here to come watch their government in action. Lord, pray a blessing on them as well. We just pray that you'll help us to remember that whatever we do to your glory and honor. Pray that you'll be with us throughout our day and as we journey home later today, hopefully. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right. Thank you, Senator Jones. Today, Garrett Dixon. Garrett is a peanut producer and here for Peanut Day. He is a guest of Senator Hovey.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Garrett. Great to have you with us today. Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Albritton, Mr. Allen, Mr. Barfoot, Mr. Beasley, Mr. Bell, Mr. Butler, Mr. Conley, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Chastain, Ms. Coleman, Ms. Coleman Madison, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Figures, Mr. Gavan, Mr. Gudger, Mr. Hatcher, Mr. Hovey, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Livingston, Mr. Milson, Mr. Orr, Mr. Price, Mr. Reed, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Schofield, Mr. Sessions, Mr. Shellnut, Mr. Singleton, Mr. Smitherman, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Stutz, Mr. Wagner, Ms. Weaver, Mr. Williams.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 32 senators present, which is a quorum. The Senate is ready to transact business.
Mr. President,
Senator Wagner.
move that we excuse absent senators.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
Mr. President,
Senator Wagner.
move that we dispense with the reading of the journal from the previous legislative day
All right, any objection?
and approve the journal for the previous day.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Thanks, Senator Wagner. Now move on to introduction of bills. All right, no House messages, no committee reports. Any motions or resolutions? All right, Senator Wagner.
Mr. President,
Senator Wagner.
have a report from the Committee on Rules.
All right, Secretary Reed received the report from the Committee on Rules.
From From the Committee on Rules, Senate Resolution Number 6, Special Order Calendar. Be it resolved by the Senate that the following bills in the order name shall be the special, paramount, and continuing order of business, taking precedence over all other matters until disposed of for the 5th legislative day only. On page 1 of the calendar, House Bill Number 1 by Representatives Reynolds and others relating to supplemental appropriations.
Mr. President,
Senator Wagner.
move the Senate adopt the report from the Committee on Rules.
All right, Secretary, call the long roll.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chastain. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton. Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
$28 ayes, 0 nays. The special order calendar is adopted. Secretary, call the first bill.
On page 1 of the calendar, House Bill Number 1 by Representatives Reynolds and others relating to appropriations. Committee amendment pending.
Senator Albritton.
Mr. President, how are you this morning?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm fine. We got HB 1 here, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think there's a committee amendment that's there.
That's correct.
All right, do we need to take or deal with that first? Yeah. I think
That's up
so.
to you, yeah.
So you need a motion to adopt the committee amendment, correct?
Yeah, would you like to use a previous roll?
Use the previous roll, yes.
Yeah.
All right. I think I need to talk about what the amendment does or does not do, I think.
I've got lots of questions, Mr. President, so.
All right. So Senator Albritton, you yield to Senator Orr.
I yield to Senator Orr, of
All right,
course.
you're recognized.
So there goes the shell answer, man. I've got nobody to answer my burning questions about this legislation. I was asked by higher authorities to talk so that sidebar conversations could occur. We are looking at the ARPA legislation, of which I have no copy, but doing it from memory. I know that we're making several investments across the state, mainly in broadband, which will be, if I recall correctly, the #1 recipient of the ARPA funding that we have going forward. Oh, here comes the answer, man. You got some answers for me, or you won't just listen to me drone on?
I want to ask you a question. What?
Oh, I'll make them up.
Well, no, it's about the amendment. What, I say I'm not on general fund.
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you about the amendment. So
Okay.
the amendment that was put on yesterday allows for stormwater sewers to be included along with wastewater and drinking water systems. So if it's expanded to include now rain stormwater sewer. And also it requires a portion of that money to be matched in a grant application process, that there would be a match from the locals to put their skin in the game to get some of that money. And so that's certainly a good thing to have as well, to get the locals to put in some money to be able to draw this money down from ADEM. And then, of course, the regular wastewater, drinking water that we did in round one, there's a good amount for that as well. So that's what the amendment did generally. And
You have some concerns or something about it?
no, I was just asked to come up here and
Oh, I got you.
and just
Oh, okay.
enthrall the individuals in the gallery or those that may be watching. And
I got
I would think it'd probably behoove them to go get another cup of coffee if they got to listen to me talk for a few minutes.
You're a good talker.
Oh, no.
You're okay.
No. You're the master. I'm
No, I'm not no mouse.
I'm just a little Padawan here,
No, but see, you got the big warrant. You the budget chair. You got the warrant.
Oh, that's right. Now I need to stick with the numbers and not the orations to talk. I have been brought a copy of the bill, though. If you've got further questions,
Oh, I like I dialogue with you about that. We'll start with the stormwater. I dialogue with you.
Okay.
The first round, there was some concerns about stormwater then, but I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm just speaking for the few people that I talked to, as we were going through that process. And that was a general consensus that, everybody, whether, we need the stormwater or not, was going to first go the first round to do what we did to try to help in those other areas that's in there. But it was a general feeling and consensus that we needed to address that. And I'm like you, I think it's very good that we do that. But what moved me the most is that we had this big storm. And I'm one of these kind of people, let me tell you, when it comes to the big 4 news channels, I just kind of surf the news. You be on 6 and I'll look at it and I'll see, then I go to 13, then I go to 42. For us, and then, it is ABC, and then 33, 40, which is 67. I kind of go through that litany. And it amazed me that on one channel, I click it on, it's talking about stormwater. They talking about Huntsville. Then I see on another one, they're talking about, not right behind each other, but on another one, they were talking about Montgomery. And then I saw on another one, they were talking about Mobile. Then I saw, of course, they talked about us, down in the valley where we are. And then I flipped back on another one, and they were talking about Vestavia. And what I came to the conclusion with this.
So all those places were flooding?
Yeah, from the storm water.
Right.
And what sometimes I think we don't kind of visualize, because we be doing, like you doing stuff, I'm doing stuff. But I got to thinking, I said, we live on the basin of the Appalachian Mountains. You go look at a map, you see all the Appalachian Mountains. And what's happening here is that a lot of us are in the valley part of the mountains, because you don't build many cities unless it's on top of a level mountain, not on the side of it. So we're there, and all the water coming off the mountain, and it's going to come forever and ever in 300 days. That's my little phrase. In 300 days, it's going to come. And so we have to address that, just like, and I think about this too, just like the people in Boston, Massachusetts, they got to address snow. You know, their thing is snow. So they got all these snow plows and all these kind of blowers and salt trucks and everything. We are in the South. Ours is stormwater drainage and vegetation. You know how stuff just grow. You got all these street and sanitation people, you know, cutting and I don't know what, because that's where we live. So our investments have to be in those areas that affect us. We wouldn't be in this box talking about putting snow plows in there. You know, that we'd be looking at each other and saying, what are we talking about? So I just wanted to tell you that I fully support what we're trying to do there in that regard.
Well, I learned a geography lesson today. You know, I kind of knew all that. I've got the amendment here from the committee. Yep, pretty much as I said, matching grants, you have to have a match.
Now,
Pretty basic on the amendment.
let me tell you this. I was working with a similar situation about the matching grant when we was in joint highway transportation committee, and they was talking about trying to help these small cities. And this is a statement that I made, and I'm gonna show you the geniality of my statement I made there, and I'm gonna make it here. I said that there are some of these small towns. You know, I use the phrase, people said, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But I said, some of these small towns don't even have boots. Talking about some straps. They don't even have boots. And I said that there need to be some kind of program that would allow those towns, especially some of our very small rural areas, to be able to have something like, if they meet certain criteria, forgiveness, okay? Because I can just say that, you know Decatur, up there where you are, Harmsville, up in that area, you know they can come up with the match if they have to do what they got to do. But these little small towns, it's hard for them to come up with it. And so I would hope that, I don't want to talk about coming with any kind of amendment or anything about what I'm saying, but I would hope when those procedures are written, that it would allow those small towns to still be able to have access to, these funds for that purpose. And you see what I mean? And not be blocked out.
Right. No,
Yeah.
the majority of the funds, several hundred million, no match.
Okay.
So it's like we did in round one. So
Okay.
there's not a match required. And
Okay.
so it's just a little bit, when it gets more competitive, that requires some skin in the game from
Now,
folks.
I tell you what I hope we can do, and that is this. That is that we can streamline this process for people applying for the money. I know not one of these little 11-page applications that you got to fill out forever and ever and ever. I think we need to streamline it and allow, for it may look at him. You know how it is in law. When you have your interrogatory questions and then you have your request for production, that's what I mean. The application ought to be more like the interrogatory questions. And then if you have to request, like for some documents, they put it there, but the initial application and the process should be very streamlined, I think, and it's because everybody can't, have expertise or experts.
Right. My recollection was that in round one, the locals were pretty pleased with the ease that ADEM had in its process. They I think did a good job to ramp the program up and then have a simplified application process. And my understanding, at least in round one, ADEM knew they had their list of crisis systems that really needed help, significant help, and then from there they made it work where they were able to spread the money across the state to help locals in various areas to address their water and sewer needs. So and that's what they'll do again. I think they know a lot of where all the problems are.
Yeah. That first round was like a dry run, as you want to call it.
Yeah, but it was a big, significant run for sure. Now, how that relates to COVID, I kind of got my wonderings about that. That's the reason, how we're doing this. I've got, use that old word, Senator, concerns about how we're doing all this, but
well,
I also know the train when I can spot a train when I see it too.
Well, let me say this. I understand what you're saying because I'm going to give you another analysis. Okay. With you being the budget chair, it's certain kind of things that you may actually see in your thinking about what you're saying, because when you look at certain things, now I'm going to flip the script and say it like this. Being a lawyer, when I pick up the newspaper and read it, I can tell you whether that's an editorialized kind of article with facts, or I can tell you if it's just a raw fact order, because we see the law in it. You know what I mean? You look at it, most people that are lawyers, they see for the facts in it. But when you're talking about a person came down the road and was on the wrong side of the road and hit someone, the first thing coming out of mind is negligence or reckless driving. You see what I mean? It's just so I can see how what you just said was, when you're looking at it and you're the chair and dealing with the budgets, then naturally you will just be thinking in that way. So I understand what you're saying.
Well, for the interest of the folks that may be up in the gallery, I think we got a lot of young people maybe from Lawrence County or Morgan County or Coleman County up there. I know today's Youth Co-op Day, so they're got, young people up there. So that in this ARPA legislation, Senator, we've got money for telemedicine, to help with that program and help with telemedicine, cut down on costs. People don't have to drive across the state to consult a doctor. We've also got money for the nursing homes and the hospitals, I know, that's in here.
That's good. I mean, we need to do everything we can help these hospitals from closing, and the ones who's closed, we need to get their doors open. I mean, I'm all for that. I think that is wonderful. That telemedicine too.
Then we've money for mental health, the mental health agency, which I know is important for mental health.
You're paid. Hey, son.
So we've also got 55 million for that can be food assistance for food banks, programs that provide services to child welfare.
Say that again.
We have 55 million that used for eligible programs or services in response to the negative economic impacts of the public health emergency.
I want to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, let me read through the list. So
okay.
Programs and services that are eligible for funding in this category include food assistance through food banks, programs that provide services to child welfare agencies, programs that provide services to victims of domestic violence, services for senior citizens, services for mental health disorders, behavioral analysis,
Senator Orr, do you mind if I
Long-term.
recognize some guests in the gallery?
housing security. I think everybody's paying attention, Mr. President. They're really interested in this, but by all means.
All right, well, I know you were on a roll, so I just wanted to make sure. All right, at this time, I'd like to recognize some special guests in the gallery. The guest of Senator Livingston, leadership DeKalb County. If y'all could please stand. Welcome to the Alabama Senate.
Mr.
Senator Smithman.
Mr. President, I'm stepping back and let the chairman come on up and lead us on through this process.
All right, Senator Albritton.
Thank the body. Thank Senator Smitherman and Senator Orr for maintaining microphone courtesy and for the patience of the president. President, I think we're now back on the committee amendment, and if there's any questions or concerns or discussions we have on that, I would invite them.
Just go ahead and
You ready to go? All right. I'd move for adoption of the committee amendment
All right, you going to use previous roll?
using previous roll.
Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
Mr. Albritton, Mr. Williams,
same one.
Senator Schofield.
30 ayes, no nays.
31.
31 ayes, 0 nays. The committee amendment's adopted. Senator Albritton.
Yes, sir. Now we're on the amendment as correction. We're on the bill as amended.
That's correct.
And we have a question.
All right, do you yield?
I would yield to Senator Orr.
All right, Senator Orr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, I appreciate all your hard work on this. I know you have spent a lot of time between both ARPA bills. If we never have another ARPA program, I think you'll be happy with
I would
that.
be extremely excited about not having another ARPA bill.
You know my concerns about this particular bill in that it does not fully fund the PHIP expense that was directly related to COVID, which was the reason the feds passed the original federal law for the rescue plan in the beginning. I think we're doing a disservice to PHIP. That's the reason I can't join my colleague in supporting your bill today. But other than that, good job. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and your support.
Thanks, Senator Orr. All right, Senator Albritton.
I think I have another question from Senator Coleman Madison, and I would yield to her for a question or comment.
All right, Senator Coleman Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, Senator Albritton, I have an amendment. It may not necessarily go anywhere. I want to ask you a question about,
All right, Secretary Reed, receive the amendment.
just so we'll keep it legal. We've talked, you and I have talked
Senator
about
Coleman
this,
Madison,
and
one
I'm
second. Let me
sure
let him read the amendment in real quick.
Amendment to House Bill number 1 by Senator Coleman Madison. On page 2, line 28, after funds, insert
something changed.
on page 2, line 28, after funds, insert in-kind contributions.
All right, Senator Coleman Madison.
Don't worry, I see it. Well, we're going, it's not going to fit. Don't worry about it. I just want a discussion on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Simply because we've had, and you and I have talked about this morning. One of the things, it was in the bill that came up from the House. And when we met in committee yesterday, we passed the great amendment that Senator Elliott brought forth, and I agreed to not. But even in the one that I had, we failed to put it back. There's some concern, mainly because as I look at it, in-kind contribution is a great asset for local governments, in particular rural areas. You know, it's a kind of a bartering thing. You know, I can pull up your stump if you plow my field and everybody gets what they want. It makes money, goes further when you don't have it. I was wondering if someone could explain to me why that was taken out, because counties and cities do a lot. They have the ability with their staff for engineering, design projects. They can also do public works projects and things like that. So there are a lot of things, small pipe work, they can do that in-house, and it saves money. It saves money also in contracting out. It saves time, because if they can do some things in-house, which has a value, then that saves money. And the money that you do have and you don't have to spend, it makes it goes further. We talked this morning about some issues, and I see both sides of that. It's a balancing kind of thing. As a realtor, I try to tell people, as I said, you know, you're buying your own house back, because these are things that they think have value. It only has personal value to them. If you're trying to sell a house, it has no value to me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take it down, just, you know, remove it time I get the house. So explain to me why this and the problems. And basically, this is for public consumption, because there are a lot of people that have called us. They thought it was a great thing, and when it was taken out, and I didn't notice it yesterday, but I'm just wondering.
Well, I will reiterate that in the amendment that's there and also in the bill, there are, and we're talking about one particular portion of the ARPA funds. We're talking about the $395 million that's set aside for local water, sewer, and stormwater projects. That's a portion of less than 40% of the total ARPA monies. Having said that, I would also say that of that 400 million approximately, 300 million does not require any matching funds or matching matters at all.
300 million does not require any match.
That's correct. 200 million of it deals with water and sewer. And then, well, that's actually the first is 195 million. And then the next is 100 million is water, sewer, and stormwater. And there's no match requirement on that. And then on the third is another $100 million, which is water, clean water, sewer, and stormwater, all included. That does require a 35% match. And you're right, there is no in-kind specifically specified in this.
Right.
However, there is a much leeway given both to ADEM, that will be the administration of this, to handle these matters. But one aspect that's important here, and keep this in mind, all these monies are tightly controlled by guidelines from the federal government, from Treasury. Those guidelines are very specific as to what can and can't be done in those matters. Plus, reports, quarterly reports. Every 3 months, there's a report that has to go to Treasury on each and every single dispersal. And that has to be made every quarter from now until all the monies are expended. And I don't know, it may be, Gil, beyond that to make sure how they're expended from that point. The issue here is that if we allow an in-kind contribution, that in-kind figure opens up a means of reporting that could become problematic, and it becomes also a means of disclosure that may become problematic. It simply opens up a means that we may not want to open up in some of these aspects. I believe that what we have is a means, a very flexible plan that allows all counties. In fact, we have specified within this bill that any county that did not receive a project gets first dibs. They're on first, so that every county in the state will have an opportunity and will actually have projects from these funds. We've been as fair as we can in that. We also given latitude not only to the locals as to what they apply for, how they apply on many of those, but also to aid them to control and assist and move forward in those matters. I believe what we have is a good plan that protects the counties locally, not only in getting projects, but also in the protections for the reporting processes too. I believe we have a good bill. I would, if you don't mind, I'd ask that you would draw the amendment.
I have no problem. I really appreciate you taking the time to explain it for public consumption. There's so much information in what you gave so that people better understand how they can access these funds, because the concern is that, okay, if we don't have in kind, but then you mentioned about other forms of pots that there are there's money that you do not have to have a match for. The other thing about the reporting, and specific guidelines coming down from the federal government. I can see what you're talking about on that note, simply because at the end of the day, and it may be next year sometime when they get around to Alabama's package and they look at it from all the information we submitted, and they say, wait a minute, something is not right here. You know, again, is your evaluation of what you put on it as opposed to really what it is, and you don't really have any documentation to show based on their guidelines. I would hate to see any county or city or even the state, there's a clawback and say, something is not right. And so this money or the amount that you put down, the value that you gave it, you're going to have to pay that back because we don't find any valid proof of how this was really calculated or that the service was even provided. And that would really be detrimental to any city or county, but a small city, it would be detrimental because now you're finding yourself having to pay back money that you said you didn't put in as far as money, but you put in kind. But they want money. They don't want you to bring a service to them. So I can understand that. Just one last question. I want you to explain on page 6, there's you all inserted the word
Domestic?
line 43.
Word domestic?
Domestic, yes.
Okay. Dealing with the domestic violence. That's in the, to clarify, that is one of the aspects coming under the $55 million bucket that we have, I believe that's in there. And the word domestic was put in rather than simply violence is because, again, this is COVID money. And the aspects of having the monies go toward those aspects that relate to, have a direct relation to the events of our COVID pandemic and the actions taken then. The reason we inserted domestic violence is because that was a direct relation of where people were shut in, where people were told to stay home, where people were said you can't travel, where people, and so what you had were the partners, husband, wife, other partners that are there in home that are told to be home under the COVID. Therefore, that would facilitate or be tied to what the domestic violence issues were. And we have reports stating where those were all increased during COVID. There's a direct tie there that can relate and give us a basis for providing those monies for those services. That's the clarification.
Okay, because and again, this was another one that we had gotten, that I had gotten really, in emails from the public who just, they had to be, you know, we'd be surprised that we think people don't pay attention, but they do. And so I really appreciate your explanation. I'm hoping that the public has been listening to this and now better understand what we're doing. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
All right, Senator Coleman Madison, we're on your amendment. Senator Coleman Madison, do you want to withdraw your amendment?
I'd like to withdraw it. Thank you.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Senator Coleman Madison amendments withdrawn. Thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to recognize some special guests in the gallery. Leadership Walker County, if you could please stand. They're the guest of our pro tem, Senator Greg Reed. Welcome to Alabama Senate. All right, Senator Albritton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I have another fine gentleman across from me that wants to play havoc with me.
All right, do you yield?
I would yield for a question.
All right, Senator Smitherman.
No, Mr. President, I'm not going to play havoc with it. You know,
Good to see you today.
Thank you very much. I have an amendment I would like for your consideration.
All right, Secretary Reed received the amendment.
You know you do.
Amendment to House Bill number 1 by Senator Smitherman. On page 7, line 187, after manner, insert the following. Any state agency administering a grant program for funds appropriated by this act shall not deny a timely A grant program for funds appropriated by this act shall not deny a timely submitted application based on a technical deficiency without first offering to assist the applicant correct the deficiency so long as the agency has the capacity and expertise available.
Mr. President.
Senator, you're recognized.
All right, I'll be brief. This is simply to be able to help many of our small towns where they don't have the capacity of staff to know what to do, and it gives them some advice to help them so that they won't lose the opportunity to get the grant. There were some concerns expressed about whether it would increase the necessary cost for these agencies to do it. And that's why that you see the last line where you see it said has the capacity and the expertise available to do it. So I'm offering it, and let me say this as in Senate District 18, we may have one or two cities that may fall into this category, but I'll say this to each person here, that if you're in a metropolitan area, you probably have someone there who will address that. But our small towns, they cannot afford that. And so I would hope that we would make sure that they could be able to have access and get these funds, because in many cases they are in a greater need than even some of our urban areas. So, Mr. President, I'll if you need me to yield, I'll yield back to you, or either I'll move for consideration.
Yeah.
If I may.
Yeah, you're recognized.
And Senator, you came to me yesterday afternoon and we discussed this. I saw this first time this morning. My comments on that is that I hope that we can move this forward. We have important things this afternoon that many people are interested in accomplishing, or at least watching. However, I would suggest that what we have in your statement, in your amendment, is it's already been done. In fact, that was done in ARPA 1. Whenever there was difficulty or questions, I know that ADEM helped, assisted, guided entities so that applications could be achieved. And I believe and know that they will continue to do that. I hesitate to put that language, which is already occurring, into statute. And I hope that this doesn't create a flurry of other matters of trying to make changes. I'd like to get this passed. I will say this, and Mr. President, if I might, I would suggest I'm going to vote no on this. I don't want another amendment on. We put another amendment on, we raise the potentiality for a non-concurrence and conference committee. I would prefer to leave this as clean as we have it. However, I'm not going to make that decision by myself. I'm going to let the body decide on how they choose to move forward on this bill. So with that, I would ask that we vote on this particular matter and that we use the long roll.
All right, Secretary called the long roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me be brought up. Thank you.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Aye. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Conley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chasteen. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Milson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton.
And I'm
Mr. Smitherman.
and I'm gonna keep my
Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
Twenty-nine ayes, one nay. The Senator Smitherman amendment is adopted. Thanks, Senator Smitherman.
thank you, and thank you very, very much, members. Thank you all very much.
All right, before we move on, I'd like to recognize some special guests in the gallery, the youth tour participants from Central Alabama Electric, the guest of Senator Clyde Chambliss. If y'all could please stand. Welcome to the Alabama Senate. All right, Senator Albritton, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I have another senator that wishes to play additional havoc.
All right, you yield.
I yield to my good friend.
All right, Senator Barfoot.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Senator Albritton. Havoc's not the right word, I'd say, but I wanted to say a few things that I think the folks in this body are well aware of, folks in the House are well aware of, the importance of rural health care throughout the state. I'd venture to say the vast majority of us in this body have a rural hospital or some form of rural health care that's important to the citizens that we represent. You think about the baseball games, the football games that go on Friday nights. You think about the automobile accidents or maybe just in terms of normal everyday occurrences, things that happen that we need emergency medical attention. And a vast majority of the folks that we represent up here might not be able to make it to a larger urban area hospital. I'm cognizant of that. I know you are too. And I know that's important to you because I've had conversations with the vast majority of y'all about those issues and about those concerns as it relates to healthcare in rural Alabama. I'm also cognizant, as you are, and maybe a lot of the folks up here in the gallery listening to us, see Representative Chris Sales. He and I have had many discussions about the importance of rural health care, especially as it relates to Crenshaw County and other areas that he represents. I'm also cognizant that the position that we're in as in the state and the rural health care side is largely a federal issue. That those issues that when we talk about reimbursement rates from Medicare or Medicaid are something at the national level that really need to be addressed. However, our hands are not going to be completely tied. And I'm challenging each of you here, and each of you in the House to begin working on bills, to look at bills that are forthcoming and to see how they could help our rural healthcare providers, because I think that is important. We talk about broadband. Senator Schofield has poured his heart and soul into broadband, and I thank you for that. It's been a big help throughout the state. And we talk about the importance of broadband as it relates to making sure that our rural communities are vibrant or at least stabilized, that we continue to have those areas of the state that we call home and that they flourish. And broadband is one aspect of that. I think that's a job well done. But I don't think we can have those areas of the state, the rural areas of the state that flourish, that are vibrant without access to health care. Now, the model itself, is it broken? I'm not a healthcare provider. I don't know. I think the rural healthcare clinics or hospitals probably need to do some searching to figure out what can they change internally to make sure that they're viable, that they provide that service. I think that's true. I also think we have a hand in it here at the state level. So let's get to work and let's look at some things that are important to the folks we represent in the rural parts of the state. And I just challenge you to do that the remainder of the session, some bills that are going to be coming up. So thank you for listening to me, Mr. Pro Tem.
All right, thanks, Senator Barfoot. Senator Reed.
Mr. President, I want to echo some of the topics for the Alabama legislature, in particular the state Senate, in regards to what Senator Barfoot has brought to our attention. We're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars, and rightfully so, in the ARPA legislation going to hospitals, nursing homes. Those that are providing health care have reimbursable opportunities. But we have to stay focused on rural health care. And there are going to be coming in this session some topics that will allow us to make a difference on things associated with rural health care. And that doesn't take anything away from urban health care. We've got some of the greatest hospital and research facilities in America that are ours to enjoy right here in Alabama. But in looking at the strength of rural health care, there are things that we're going to be able to do. We're going to have several pieces of legislation related to nurses. We know that there's a nursing shortage. We need to stay focused on that, especially nurses in rural areas, as well as advanced practice nurses. We've made some changes and modifications for CRNAs and nurse practitioners, but in a lot of areas of my district, if we didn't have a nurse practitioner in those areas, we wouldn't have health care in some of those communities. You've got another topic that's been discussed by the Medical Association I've just learned of, related to, are there options for physicians that are trained that maybe have not made the next step to the match for their specialty or residency? And would there be an opportunity for them to be incentivized to be in rural communities, even for a short window of time? And that may be a topic that we can discuss as well, and an opportunity if you can find physicians that would go into some of these rural areas and incentivized even for a short window to be able to do that. And talking about telemedicine, and I see the minority leader behind you right there. That's been one of his #1 topics. And the reason is because thinking of broadband and all the work the legislature's doing there and what's going to be coming with telemedicine, the technology is advancing tremendously. And there's a great example in the minority leader's district in Marengo County at Demopolis at Whitfield Hospital, to where they're using telemedicine to access specialties in a lot of other of our huge tertiary care centers across the state, and being in a place to where those patients can stay in the rural hospital, be able to have access through telemedicine of those specialties and be able to be treated with that specialty care in their local hospital, which is not only great for them, their families, to stay in their local community, but it's one of the ways that local hospitals are going to be able to stay in business. So there's a lot of things coming, Senator, and you bring something to our attention that is very important. You and I have talked about it repeatedly. I know it's important in your district. My commitment to you, as has been the case throughout my tenure in the legislature, to find ways to increase health care benefit for the people of Alabama, in particular in a rural district like mine, that we're staying focused on rural health care. So I just compliment you on being able to bring this topic to our attention. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Reed. At this time, I'd like to recognize some more special guests in the gallery. When I call your name, if you could please stand. Leadership Lee County, the guest of Senator Hovey and Senator Price. If y'all could stand. Welcome to the Alabama Senate. All right, Senator Albritton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice I have my good friend to the north, the gentleman representing Choctaw County. I think he wishes to speak.
All right, do you yield?
Yeah, well, I think they changed out.
All right, Senator Figures.
I think he yielded to me. Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Albritton, I just want to thank you and the leadership for making sure that those cities and counties who won't be able to pay a 35% match will be able to get the funding that they need to do their projects as well. That's always very important to me. As you know, I sit on the HRIP 2 committee that decides where the money is going for the roads roads and bridges, and that's my number one major concern as well, that there are cities and counties in this state, but we're all in this together and we make the whole together. So we have to look out for them as well. So I just wanted to thank you for doing that. And if I might also add on a different note, Mr. President, all of the pages when they come to the Senate, it seems the one common thing that they always share with me, whether they're from my district or in other parts of the state, is that they are just so surprised how all of the senators are just talking so loud and not paying attention. So they said sometimes they can't even hear. So, and I know I'm guilty of being a part of that sometimes myself, absolutely. So we could just lower our voices so the pages can hear us a little bit better. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Singleton,
How you doing, Mr. President? Thank you.
you're recognized.
Senator Albritton, I want to thank you for the work that you've done on this. You know, this is a lot of money to spend. And I think that we've done a great job in terms of investments, and the investments that we did on the first end with the first opera went out. We invested in some of these same tranches, and we are beginning to see the difference in the investments that we're making, which are going to be long term in this state. Our infrastructure is going to be a little bit better. While we're not going to be able to get it all, but we're definitely knocking a hole, into what we're doing. We're beginning to see rural water and wastewater projects that have been systemic problems in those communities. They'll now be able to get fresh drinking water in communities and have sewer that is not running on the ground. We're seeing that in some of these cities and counties, for the first time, the hospitals, especially with the $30 million, I wish we could have put more money set aside for the rural hospitals again, like we did in the first tranche, because that money really helped rural hospitals since they were talking about health care. I saw my rural hospitals was like, yes, because when you try to carve them out in the bigger picture, they get counted by beds, and then their numbers get real small. They may get $30,000 or $15,000 when they started looking at their beds, versus the big hospitals are then going to get all of that $100 million, $200 million that are out there along with those nursing homes. So rural hospitals, when that $30 million was carved out for them in the last tranche, they was ecstatic because they were able to see significant money that can make a difference in their hospital. I also want to talk about water and wastewater, some more in stormwater. I don't have a problem with stormwater being added into this, and I think there are going to be some amendments that are going to come that's going to deal with how this stormwater pieces is. But I just want to remind people that counties across this state got $490 some odd million went directly to counties. And some of them chose not to do any stormwater with their money. And now they're crying into us and trying to make it urgent that we do this for them. That's why I'm just not feeling that urgency. While I'm okay with it, and we're going to do it, okay? But counties, and especially some of the larger counties, got money directly. Cities got over $400+ million. Just the Big Ten cities got over $410 million that came to them directly. That they didn't have to come to the state like everybody else had to get their money out of a tranche. They didn't have to come through that. They got their money. And the counties, Lord bless their soul, was telling their people not to spend their money and went out and hired a consultant and charged counties to spend their money. I had a real problem with that. And so when you're out here working with these poor counties and charging counties to spend their money, where all of those counties had attorneys on staff that could have told them how to spend their money. But leadership around the county associations were telling them not to spend their money, that you're going to get in trouble. But as soon as they got a consultant, everything became clear on how to spend it. I have a problem with that. But we're going to do this, and we're going to help counties today, and we're going to help larger cities and all, but rural communities are going to get some of this money, and I think that we're doing a great job in terms of investment and making sure that everybody get a piece. I think that in the last tranche of money, every county basically got touched except two, my understanding, in terms of projects with water and wastewater, the way they did it. I didn't like some of the loans that was put on some of my rural communities, because if there was emergency communities, why are we slapping loans on them when the money from the federal government came to us for free? And so I had a problem with that. So I had to deal with ADEM on some of those communities and have them to bag off for those loans, because I thought that they was being too aggressive and trying to stretch the money. And that's what they were trying to do. But the money was allocated to make sure that we bring these rural small communities up. And so whether it's urban communities that need it or rural communities that's needed, that where there's devastation and poverty, we need to be helping those communities. This is an opportunity for us to invest in those communities to be able to bring. I like the fact that we have a $55 million tranche to go back to give money and grants back into the community again. But the one thing I don't like is that we didn't include community health centers in this bill. Because you know and I know that in our rural areas, it wasn't the hospitals that was out there giving vaccinations and making sure that our people were being set up. It was the community health centers in the rural areas that was doing that. And these community health centers got some help from the federal government. They were given $1 million here, $1 million there, and they stretched their dollars. They did testing. They did vaccinations. They're still doing immunizations. They're making sure that people are staying healthy, because the community health center in most of these communities is the only healthcare center they have to go to. There are no major physician doctor offices there. Besides the health department, they're the first line of defense for our communities. And so I would love to have seen a piece carved out for community health centers in rural areas or even in urban areas that are doing the work to make sure that people during this pandemic were being taken care of. And so what we don't see that is reflective in this tranche of money. I will hope that when we come back in our budgeting process, it gives us an opportunity to see them who they are and allow us to be able to help them and be able to, so they can continue to do the good work that they're out there doing. So I don't want to prolong this any longer, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that these large cities and counties got money. Some of them hire consultants, a consultant to tell everybody how they're spending money, and now they want to put this pressure on us to give them some storm water. And everybody calling. I got county commissioners calling me, talking about storm water, and I'm saying, why don't you tell them to tell you, call me and ask for something you really need. Y'all don't need no storm water out there in them dirt roads you got. You know? You're just doing it because somebody told you to do it. And you really need more water and sewer in your community than you need stormwater. And so there are stormwater problems in Jefferson and Baldwin and Mobile, and we want to fix it. We don't want to see floods. Right here in Montgomery, this building floods when there's an opportunity. So I want to see that. I think that it's important that we do it. But I just want to be reminded that counties, again, got over $953 million, and not one stormwater project was done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Senator Singleton. At this time, I'd like to recognize some special guests in the gallery. Guest of Senator Schofield, when I call your name, if you could please stand, the Marshall County Leadership Challenge. If y'all could stand. Welcome to the Alabama Senate. Senator Albritton.
Mr. President, I'd move for third reading, final passage of HB 1 using long roll.
All right, Secretary, call the long roll.
Mr. Albritton.
Aye.
Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chasteen. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston, Mr. Melson, Mr. Orr, Mr. Price, Mr. Reed, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Schofield, Mr. Sessions, Mr. Shelnut, Mr. Singleton, Mr. Smitherman, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Stutz, Mr. Wagner, Ms. Weaver, Mr. Williams,
(29 ayes, 3 nays). House Bill 1 passes. Thank you, Senator Albritton.
Mr. President.
Senator Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for your work on the ARPA process. It was ours given to be able to find a way to navigate these resources for the good of the people of Alabama. And so I appreciate all of your engagement, in particular, Chairman Albritton. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your engagement, for your hard work. We appreciate you, sir. So where are we now? Ladies and gentlemen, we've finished our process. This legislation, in that it was modified, as you well understand, will have to go to the House. We've had conversation with leadership in the House, expect that they're going to review what we've done, and then there will be a concurrence, which puts us in a place for the special session to conclude. But we can't do that at the moment. We're going to have to see where things are. There could be the possibility, as you are aware, of a conference committee if there are issues that the House is not comfortable with. We don't expect that, but we don't know for sure. So with that, I'm going to ask that we have a motion that we stand in recess at the call of the chair, and then you all can remain in the chamber, go to your offices, whatever. As quickly as we have information back from our colleagues downstairs, we'll make you aware of it as to what our next step is.
All right, you heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand in recess, call of the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President.